Alrighty, daily trading recap for this Wednesday, the 6th of April, 2022. To Christ be the glory. Market internals dollar volume of the day before we get into anything. NASDAQ, $297 billion volume as of 34 minutes after the close. NYSE, $394 billion volume. OTC's $1.9 billion volume total on the day. FOMC minutes that we had coming out at 2 o'clock, given what looked to be a nice little rise immediately following that, and then a hard sell-off to create new lows, and then back again to create new highs, and then just kind of sideways here from now on. Hard sell-off. We're closing 1% perfectly in the red here on the day in SPY. Just continuing to still doing the future strategies with the 930 strat of looking for 2 points above. Worked out beautifully pretty much immediately today. Love to see it there. And the session strategy did not come to fruition today. So one of the loser days today, closing in like 50 points below where we opened the entire session yesterday around 8 o'clock Eastern time there. So factoring that into one of the losses for this total trade, but that is, of course, it's tough to take that chink on the armor, but keeping that time perspective in mind in all of this, that it isn't about the one individual day, it is about the total collection of what this trade is. And for the reason that I'm not doing anything with this trade, I don't have to exert any amount of emotional exuberance or excitement because price reaches certain factors or watching tick by tick action. That's not what this trade is meant to be. It's totally meant to be an automated, no involvement trade whatsoever, and then bring in the free cash because of that. So did actually start to go ahead and take that next step in sizing up that futures account to be able to size up my contract size to step into that ES position size. How I originally tried to do this strategy but didn't really factor in the potential unrealized P&L that I would be having to be taking on some of these days like this, and just even having to take losses, factoring that into the potential play out of just randomly whenever I started the trade, if that day was going to be the loser day. Kind of the unfortunate circumstances in that time that I ran into very early on with this strategy, but learning from that and now avoiding that as we go forward with this and making it the strategy that we have backtested and poured ourselves and all this time into. So great learning lessons with that. I also wanted to mention, just for the introduction of mentioning BBAI, but of, even me not even really seeing any specific news catalyst for this thing running up, but just another good reminder as I was pulling up, going through chat again, of Jack number 2, and I think even Tim Lento talking about it, of, they were thinking like, okay, maybe it's from the S8 that they put out yesterday. Whatever form they put out yesterday, that, well, maybe it's this change of ownership is running this thing up from yesterday. But then, them even acknowledging too, that's my best guess. I have no idea why it's going up. What an affirmation, again, that you don't always have to know everything. And even these top guys, they're just kind of guessing, and they're still trading it, but they're even saying too in that of, I don't really know why it's up, but it's up. So going off of that again too, that it's not about only trading when you think you know every single thing about it. There are just so many freaking variables that you have to try and consider, and it's so involved that you're never going to know everything. But it's just about checking off as many boxes as you can and protecting yourself with risk control when it goes against you, and just continuing to fine-tune that more and more as it goes. So good affirmation, a little reminder in that today as I was going through chat. But let's get into tickers. MOBQ was the first bad boy, the biggest first screen day mover on the day. We're closing pre-market. We started up 64% with like $50 million volume. Closing regular hours here at 30% above where we closed that previous trading day yesterday. American Marketing and Advertising Agency, 3 million floater, super low float. Newscast today was they're becoming some provider advertising-wise with like a little specialty, I guess, in NFTs and crypto. Maybe trying to hit key buzzwords with that, but regardless. They don't have the greatest amount of free cash lying around. They do also have MOBQW with warrants exercisable at 498, which we didn't really factor at all or come close to today at that $5 range mark. And totally followed my plan in all of these trades today. Took a 0.5% loss and even took an even worse loss on trying to do a little dip and rip attempt here on relatively smaller size. I was trying to potentially take a 500 share position size on this little very scalpy trade, but ended up cutting my size in half because I haven't done it before, because it's just very new. So I'm kind of glad I did, because it didn't really work out today anyway. But even if it did work out, I can't say that I would have been pissed at myself, because it was the first time. I haven't really done extreme hard backtesting to say that, this strategy was going to work out to a T, and I should have been more leveraged in it. But this was one of those great experiences today. So that, hey, even though I had an idea and even it was a profitable risk reward setup, and when it went wrong, we controlled ourselves well. Hey, that's a great lesson in itself, and I'm certainly willing to pay that $2 or whatever I took in a loss on that position size I had for this first trade. So that first idea was for how we're moving. We're opening the day just a little below VWAP as it was selling off a little bit from that initial perk just above $3 range. I want to say I wish it would have done this, but that's such a non-going anywhere type of statement of, I wish it would have done this. Yeah, I wish it would have gone up when I was in it and I would have made money. Like, I can wish that all day long, but it's not what happened, right? I have to go off of what was actually there. But the thought process was, okay, it's holding decently well without a huge crazy range either to the downside or to the upside beyond what it already did in pre-market. So that's to say that, okay, everybody's kind of straighten themselves out before we get into the craziness that is that first minute of market open of huge volume coming in, looking to stack itself whichever way it wants to go. So with that thought process in mind, and with these other first screen day movers that we've seen, the total thesis for this trade was, hey, let's get a little position just before that market open, and similar to how I like to do with that 930 strategy on the S&P 500 through futures, let's just play and look for a little tiny scalp based on that crazy volume that usually comes in. It's not guaranteed, and we're certainly going to protect against that downside if it's there. I really came into this one factoring in it on a time perspective of just, hey, if it's after that 1 minute candle and it's not really doing what I want to see, or if it's going hard against me and not showing any signs that it wants to come up, if it just started dumping off the table in that first minute of market open, I probably would have been screwed over. But really don't feel that we've seen a lot of those for how these things are moving, and that they just right out of the gate dump all of a sudden. That was my protection in against that for risk management. Of course, it could have absolutely happened, but it's just hard to believe that would happen. Famous last words, but for how many times these first screen day movers move similar to this, that they usually have some amount of perk, if any. And sure enough, if they do have a little dip and rip, it becomes almost that 1 minute, 2 minute dip before it starts to reclaim the VWAP and then start to test higher off of that for the quick, very short and very sharp little bounce off of there for a higher play during the first few minutes of market hour. So this was totally just hey, I'm getting a position here. It actually kind of put in a nice little base, just above 2.6, so got like a 2.64 average with 250 shares. Had a limit order in at 2.8 immediately before market open, before the bell even rung, just waiting to see if there was just going to be craziness of prints going off even before you can see that action happening for that type of scalp of a trade of just saying, hey, I'm being pretty reasonable. This thing could go to 2.9. It could go to $3 within the first 2 minutes of market open. Certainly didn't happen today, obviously, but yeah, we've seen crazier things out of some of these movers. So just looking for the most micro of scalp to say, hey, I've got a little position here. I'm going to try to play off of the craziness of all that volume coming in and respect the downside if it's just not going to happen. So sure enough, that was the high of the day in that first minute candle. Just really did not have any more steam to continue it higher. And even looking just at a very basic glance of that tape replay that I got to take on this one today on that Trader HQ channel, it wasn't like there was huge overhead in this stepping up to keep it subdued or keep it down. It's just like the bid wasn't really stepping up to continue to accelerate it higher. So it was just not in the cards for any pickup of speed to continually let this thing just start ripping within the first few crazy minutes of the volatility there. So cut it for 0.5% loss, just had that stop already in around where as it was starting to test these levels, and then as we opened in that second minute candle, adjusted my stop from this low a day and eventually from that low of that first candle to where my entry was, 264-ish here around that point. So got hit just below there. And then watch it just continue to tank. I wanted to potentially be a part of this 938, a little dip and rip of saying, hey, it's putting me in a higher low off of this candle. This could be a nice little reclaimed VWAP attempt here. It's a little bit premature of the 945 time frame than we normally like to look for, but it's relatively close. But sure enough, that ended up rolling over as well and spanking a lot more longs that were also potentially looking for that same move. But then getting in a similar point of, okay, it's got to go upwards at some point. Famous last words once again in that, but of, okay, we're just continuing to press down. Shorts got to start covering at some point. This is pretty decent price action from where it started on the morning bell of if big position shorts still had a position in this thing or were just looking to cover shares into strength. This would have been certainly around the time frame to do so. This candle became, as it started putting the bottom here, around 2.3-ish, 2.29, I believe, was at the low of this candle. that started to hold pretty well. So sizing with a little position there, and then sure enough, just tickled my fancy, tickled my little stop to break to new low of day within 2 minutes after that, but still managed to hold. Didn't continue to break or press lower off of that. And for the next 9:45, next 30 minutes, just continued to hold that same line. So then it's just okay, do I get back in? Is this a long trap? Is this just too good to be true? And sure enough, it was. It eventually cracked that and obviously collected a lot more longs souls in this 10, 14-minute candle here. And eventually did have a slight press to VWAP, but perfectly rejected off of there to just produce nothing else on the day after that. So, that little dip in rip attempt was 100 shares. 232 was my entry on that one. But cutting the losers when they needed to be cut. That is my rule number 2 of everything that I do with my trading and especially with these specific trades, I felt I defined that risk reward a lot better and pursued trades that would benefit me to the upside far more than they would hurt me to the downside, and able to take bigger size than I would have if I tried to put this in the column of, oh, this was an experimental trade, or oh, this was just a little educational, 20 share teaser trade. But no, this is about trading. This is about making money. I need to be taking bigger size on these trades, and I need to be taking actual trades that have opportunity behind them. So finding those as they're there and recognizing when it's not going to actually come to fruition, that trade idea is not actually going to happen. This one had this dip and rip had a little bit more meat to the bone. Maybe I cut myself off a little prematurely, but eventually did end up cracking itself and did not really produce what I was hoping to see. I mean, 2.5 was going to be close to my goal of, I would have certainly been taking off profits close to that point. I mean, it's a 10% move even from there as well. So yeah, that was MOBQ. SBFM, I also had to mention, did this one paper short for the second day mover. I believe this one is crazy low floater as well. Sunshine Biopharma, 2.2 million float I'm showing here on scans. I wanted to get short in this one in pre, just as a starter short position, but of course, succumbing to the TradingView paper platform, you can't really get short during pre-market. But anyway, pretty soon after the gate, starting in short, just as it was just breaking new lows. Looking at that as a starter position, I think it was 200 shares that I quoted myself at that price. Has a little perk, and that obviously would have been, in hindsight, that would have been a beautiful another area to get in more size or look to actually been the first entry for the trade itself to start playing some more downside and a break to new low of day off of that. Finds a bottom with big volume, rolls over a little bit, and then finds a little bit of a higher lower, call that a double bottom, if you will, as well. Covered half of my position at that point, recognizing that fact in it. And perfectly before this huge volume push and huge surge immediately back to VWAP, but essentially broke that trade in half to say, hey, I don't want to call it necessarily taking profits, but I just want to respect the fact of how many times I've failed to recognize that before, of being short biased on a stock because of the position I had or because of just how I wanted to rose-colored glasses look at it, of not recognizing the beautiful long opportunities that end up happening at times, similar exactly to this of, wow, hey, beautiful double bottom there. There's shorts obviously got to be panicking, not only from entering today if they want to getting an entry like me, or if they're still holding from yesterday at any of these prices. If this starts to pick up and accumulate and fail to break lower, it's obviously going to get some bids and press this thing higher. So we get a little perk above VWAP, but pretty soon rejects off of there with big volume. So start in, essentially size myself back into the original position size with a better average fill at that rejection. And then sure enough, it's got more volume to come in to push it to a new high, to break back to the upside of VWAP and push it to a new high. That forces me to cover, and that was the extent of that move once again. So screwing myself over, but that's why I'm paper with these trades, and that's why I still can't short with my margin account, because I'm holding myself accountable to trades like this of it just was not in the cards. And I was looking at, I am just making the opposite. I am near selling bottoms and buying the tops at these times. And that's just totally needs to be adjusted. That's not how it works. I need to be selling the tops and buying the bottoms. It's just, we need to be doing the vice versa. So learning from my mistakes on that, but still adjusting accordingly to that. And sure enough, turned into a very beautiful little consolidation, a little wedge here that on nice volume midday turned into a crazy, crazy runner to get to a high of 789 there. 789. Two, we talked about it he had a pretty early daily trading recap or small cap recap today that he pulled this one up before really any of this move even happened, but of how he said, yeah, it'd be unlikely if I was to play this one today, even though it was looking pretty good. He would see this more as a third day surge type of option, but Yeah, sure. I would be interested to see if he did actually end up taking this one. He may have been away from the computer screen for all I know. But gosh, yeah, it's just hard to say in hindsight of how beautiful you can say that this did look before this move happened. But in the same light of, yeah, could I have predicted that in the moment of seeing price action around here, or just having to be so intently watching this thing for all hours of the market day to be ready for the morning session and into the lunch and afternoon session, to be ready and willing to wait for that volume to come in and start pressing this thing in order to take an actual position to potentially play for even remotely close to a move like this. Of course, this, in hindsight, it's like, yeah, why would you not expect for such a crazy percentage move to come out of this one, or a very nice opportunity at least during this second day play on this very low floater for how much it moved during that first screen day initial pre-market spike there. But yeah, that is trading. It's never going to be perfect, and it's always going to be a continual evolution, an adaptation to what the market is throwing my way. So yeah, on top of that, on top of that idea, it's really just totally about choosing those best setups. And I feel like I've seen it repeatedly today for some reason, for all the avenues I've looked at, of just people saying of, yeah, you need to be picking your A+ setups. You do not have to be trading every single day. And I've heard that time and time again throughout my career even, but that's just, it hits so close to home because, yeah, I feel like today matched along perfectly with that idea, that it wasn't a need or desire that I had to trade today, but of, hey, I felt there were some opportunities here, and I'm knowing what their potential could be, not trying to force out of anything out more of them than what I feel is actually there. And just respecting that and being able and willing within myself to say, you know what, yeah, there's really nothing that I have to trade today. And I'm so thankful that I have stepped more into this futures trading and more algorithmic trading as well, that can also kind of appease a little bit of that FOMO, or just like need and desire to click buttons. But to say that, you know, even if I didn't have that, but even though I do, that it's still just that appeasing feeling of, hey, I am still involved. Even if I'm not clicking any buttons, I'm still involved, and I'm still learning, and I'm still growing, and it's making me a better trader because of that. And this whole trading thing is just absolutely crazy. I come back to that more and more every single day, that this is unlike any other avenue anywhere else in the world, and I'm still extremely grateful and thankful for every opportunity that comes out of it. And I sincerely thank you all for watching, and we will catch you guys on the next one.